I'm your host, Stephen Vanover, here on the Sports Talk Line Network, where we talk sports 24/7, 365. This is the New York Giants Weekly, Week 2, and we are here with Mr. New York Giants himself. I'm talking Tom McAllister out of New York City. Good day, sir.
Thanks for having me, Van.
Oh, always a pleasure, man. And this is week 2. I understand that, as always, in our NFC East show, we covered what happened last week, so we're not going to dwell on that so much. But we are going to do the social media thing. At this point, I got to ask you, have you subscribed yet down below? Have you hit that notify button? And have you, if you're watching this on social media, have you retweeted it or reposted it? Please do. We appreciate it. Without you, this show is nothing. Now, back to the Giants, and they're going to be facing the Bears. As we do every week, I will take on the identity of the opponent. And of course, there's only one team that Tom McAllister has taken on. That's the New York Giants. And Tom, as always, we're going to set this up with me asking you about exactly where the Giants are with certain aspects of their team. So let's set it up. Let's dive right in. First of all, any team wants to know about, what about the quarterback? Where is he right now? How did he do last week? How's he going to do this week coming up?
I think Daniel Jones, you can put him in the 50-50 category. At times, he made some great throws. One throw that sticks out is their first drive of the second half. It was 3rd and 14 at the Giants' own 5-yard line. He threw a strike to Darius Slayton for an 18-yard gain.
Yes.
The Giants' offense, it kept on moving and kept on moving. They got down to the 4-yard line, and then Daniel Jones throws the ball where there are 5 Steelers and 1 Giant, and a defensive lineman was able to get the interception. So, and that is something that totally describes Daniel Jones, the positives and the negatives, where he can make the great throws, but he's turnover prone. Van, how do you feel about that?
Well, I certainly hope that the engineer down here below, when you were saying that, has put fantasy football alert, Slayton, fantasy football alert, right? Okay, if he's somehow available in your league, the reason the guy next to me is smiling, go ahead, tell him mine, Tom.
I basically won two games because of Darius Slayton, and I went 3-0 in fantasy because of Darius Slayton. So if my team doesn't win, at least I win. So at least that's something. It was very impressive. But getting to Darius Slayton, he's the Giants' number 1 receiver right now.
Well, that's what I want to ask you about. Okay, we talked about the QB. The QB has actually shown well. Okay, he ran with the ball a few times and he held on to it, man.
Most of the time.
Well, there you go. I'm being nice. But again, who's he throwing to right now? The wide receiver core. You've got some veterans there, but the most exciting guy and the number 1 receiver right now, you've already explained about him. Who's he got working with him? Who's Slayton got as mates back there?
Well, I think you have Darius Slayton is the number 1 wide receiver right now. Him and Daniel Jones. Usually with a young quarterback, they need to get their go-to player, and Darius Slayton and Daniel Jones, they came in together. They were practicing on the sidelines together last year, and it looks like those reps in the offseason last year have come to fruition. So if you're game planning against the New York Giants, you want to shut down Darius Slayton at wide receiver. The other wide receiver you've got is Sterling Shepard, who he's consistent. He's a consistent star in the NFL. I wouldn't say he's a weakness. It's just he kind of needs a little bit more oomph. One of the big
He's never
issues
broken out, man. He's never broken out. He's always had the talent. It's been there. They drafted him high enough for him to explode, and they've been patient with him. The skill set is there. He works hard in practice, but he has never broken out.
Yeah, and also Golden Tate, who was injured, but seems like he's someone who usually hasn't been able to stay healthy. But I think the brunt of the frustration of all the receivers was tight end Evan Engram for a few reasons. One, he dropped some key balls in the last week. He got beat on a few blocking plays, but who didn't last week? So that's kind of something that was frustrating, to say the least. And he did make one great play, but he got the offensive pass interference call, which is kind of something that was going across week 1 in the NFL. We'll see if it develops. So you got to wonder, if the Giants are looking at Evan Engram and be like, no, we got enough tight ends in the league on our roster, I should say. I'm surprised they didn't sign Jason Witten, Mark Bavaro, Jeremy Shockey. Maybe Mike Ditka could still play. But that's something you got to see is going to be a storyline going forward. How the Giants utilize Evan Engram. Do they keep him at tight end, or do they split him out to wide receiver if they play him at all? Van, how do you feel about that?
Well, that's what I wanted to talk to you about, because now Jason Garrett is the offensive coordinator there, and he has a very clear vision of what he likes, what he doesn't like. And one of the things he does is he wants his quarterback to have a go-to guy. And I think that Jones, instead of having Jason Witten, he's got Slayton. So he's got his go-to guy. Tight end is not as important to him. Very often, quarterbacks will develop a relationship with that tight end just because he's always open on third down. He's that security blanket. But he gets that with Slayton. Slayton seems to always be open on third down. So it doesn't seem to matter as long as it's there, and I think Garrett is fine with that. I don't think he knows what to do with him exactly. I mean, why do you move a guy to wide receiver when he's dropping balls? The blocking needs to get better. This kid needs to devote himself to blocking. That is a problem. And actually, while we're talking about that, let's move to the offensive line, because you're going up against a team last week that gave you guys plenty of problems, okay? They sacked Daniel Jones, what was it, 3 times, something like that? And then they pressured him quite a bit. There's a few times he couldn't even step forward. I thought he played really amazingly well under the circumstances. But regardless, that had an effect, the effect that they wanted, not only on the passing game, but the running game. So on this side of the ball, again, Chicago, they've got Khalil Mack. And it's like, as you pointed out, it's like when, the Rams with Aaron Donald. They didn't really need anybody else. So Khalil Mack is that good. But it's hard to be that good every game. So ideally, he needs help on the other side. Quinn, it's 50-50 right now as if he's going to play. But even if he does play, he's not going to be at 100%, because if he was, as we talked about, he'd be playing. Okay. So I don't think you guys are going to be facing quite the fierce pass rush that you were against Pittsburgh. That was a tough opener. And you guys weathered the storm. So how do you think that the Giants are going to do against this pass rush in both the passing game and the running game? Who do you think has an option to shine here?
I think with the running game, it was pretty well known that Saquon Barkley had a subpar game. Whether you can blame him, the offensive line, it's very difficult to win in the NFL when you have a one-dimensional offense, especially with a second-year quarterback. I think what they could do is it'll be easier to game plan, and they'll be like, it's very simple. Where's Khalil Mack? Let's run the other way. And one of the things I think the Giants had the most success offensively when they spread out with multiple wide receivers or tight ends, where they're able to spread that pass rushing unit out. That's when they're able to move the ball most successful. When they lined up in those power formations, they were not successful. So that's kind of something I want to look at to see if Jason Garrett implores that or implements that going forward in the next game against Chicago, where it's like, you know what, we're best when we spread the field. We're not able to really overpower people. We're gonna have to finesse people for right now. Barkley, he did have that one great play in the passing game, but
that was awesome.
It did. They need to develop that ground game. There was a part of me too, should they line up Saquon Barkley and maybe put in a decoy or something like that, just to see how the other team reacts? So I think the offensive line will play better. You have to think, I believe they had a rookie left tackle. They had a new center coming in. They had a new right tackle come in Camp Fleming. You got to think they'll improve as the season goes on. All you got to find is that one weakness on the Bears defensive line and just constantly attack that in the ground game, and that opens up the passing game. And one thing I remember last year, the Giants did a lot of run-pass option. I wonder if Garrett will try that, because you have a more mobile quarterback with Saquon Barkley. I gotta wonder if they're going to bring that out in 2020, and they start that next week, because Jones is a mobile quarterback, and that's another way where you can kind of use the play-action pass and keep the opposition on their toes.
All right, well, I think the ability to effectively use Saquon Barkley, you touched on it, that's going to be the key to your offense, to get consistent replay from him. Hopefully right now the engineer is thrown in and we're watching some replays of Saquon Barkley's incredible, I believe it was 31-yard catch, tip pass, hurdle, just incredible up the right side. And The guy that was the defender that got hurdled, how would you like him to be in the in the film room this last week?
Well, no, he got the W. So
there you go.
he kind of laughed at it too, where it's like, hey, no, he hurdled me, but Saquon Barkley got hit, and you got to wonder too. Saquon Barkley can be a threat in the passing game, and you got to wonder if there are ways they can utilize that going forward, because there are a lot of times they would line up Saquon Barkley as wide receiver, motion him into the backfield, and then they would do vice versa. So you got to wonder. I think that's the type of play calling you'll see going forward, so that Daniel Jones can get a read, whether it's a zone or man, and attack accordingly.
Well, they tried to hit him early a couple times in the passing game, and it didn't go well. And he even dropped one. And I think actually that was like first game jitters, to be frank, because he's already proven he's got hands. So I agree they've got to do something, because I think what he has proven here is that if you try to use Saquon Barkley in the traditional sense, if you try to put him in and say, we need you to do X, Y, and Z here and run in between the tackles, and that's what I want you to do, I don't think you're getting the most out of him at all. It's not his strength. Picking up blitzes is not his strength, though he did an okay job last week. There was the one play where he got olayed, and it didn't turn out well for Jones, did it?
No, it didn't. That's the one thing. A lot of people were criticizing Saquon Barkley for that one play. He did. After that one play, he picked up the block several times, and it's also, like I said, you can decoy it. If the Giants' offensive line keeps on developing, where they can actually be like, know what, we can send Saquon Barkley out on a third down to, maybe pick up the 5-6 yards. That adds another threat, and the Giants' offense is able to evolve. And another issue with the Giants' offense was the red zone offense. Their first play, their first offensive series of the season, they get the ball at the 1 yard line. They could not score a touchdown. I think that is one of the big issues for the Giants to take a next step to get out of the basement of the NFC East and to be considered a contender for a playoff spot and eventually a Super Bowl. The Giants are going to be able to need to do old school Bill Parcells, Vince Lombardi, smash mouth football, where when they get the ball at the 1 yard line, they're scoring a touchdown. They're not settling for field goals, because that was the major difference offensively. The Steelers converted for touchdowns in the red zone. The Giants only settled for one. So that's something to look forward to going forward.
Well, you've been harping on the red zone offense of the Giants ever since Plaxico Burress shot himself in the leg. So, and it's been a problem that long.
Yes.
So it's something that needs to be fixed. I like Jason Garrett in a power running offense. He knows how to do it, but Barkley is not that. No. I'm curious, but you have other running backs on the team. Maybe you could switch to. But I would like to see him change up and run a different offense in the red zone, taking more advantage, as you mentioned. All right, the last thing I'm going to mention is on the flip side of the ball, the Bears. Okay, they should have lost last week, as we talked about, if not for the drop pass, in the end zone. Oh, would you like to be that guy in the film room?
Yeah,
okay.
That one's not.
All right.
Will he even be allowed in the locker room? Does he still have a job?
Yeah, exactly. But beyond that, Trubisky played like Trubisky for 3 quarters. Mm-hmm. Then the fourth quarter came, and he looked like the rookie Trubisky, and he went 8 of 10, 89 yards, 3 touchdowns, 143.3 passer rating. The Bears' running game for the whole game was decent. David Montgomery averaged 4.9 yards per carry, 5.3 yards per carry for the running game as a whole, as his backfield mates were ripping off some nice runs. All right, I don't think there's any doubt that the Bears' running game is going to be able to do okay against what I've seen of the Giants right now. I'm curious what you say and or think about that. And then on top of that, how do you think the Giants' offense can stack up against Trubisky A or Trubisky 4?
Well, I would say, first off, the Giants' run defense, they did a pretty decent job against the Steelers' running game, even though James Conner pretty much didn't get a lot of reps. The Giants were a lot more physical. That was one thing that popped out. There's a lot more gang tackling going on. They got Blake Martinez, who led the NFL in tackles. He had 12 tackles. Last week, you saw Lorenzo Carter looked like he finally starting to develop to the player the Giants wanted him to be. He had 7 tackles. He had some QB pressures. Also, Leonard Williams showed up, and he had 5 tackles, 2 for
he
loss.
got excited a few times too, man.
He did.
He was jacked up.
And you also got Dexter Lawrence, who I think could be the best first-round pick, and we know who it's not out of the 2019 draft for the Giants. But Dexter Lawrence came in, and he could be a force. He had a sack on Ben Roethlisberger. He also made a great play where Roethlisberger tried to dump it off for a screen, and Lawrence was able to get the tackle right there. So if you're you're starting to see, okay, if the Giants finally develop this pass rush, because you got to remember, Leonard Williams, he got franchise tag. He wants to get paid. He wants to have his career year this year. Dexter Lawrence, he's been very impressive, to say the least. You got Lorenzo Carter. He's entering his 3rd year. He could be someone who's a lot more active. There's a lot more speed. Blake Martinez, he's kind of the veteran of the core group.
Yes.
So that's kind of something where I think the run game.
What about Golden, man? How's he doing? I mean, he was the guy from last season that
Yes.
brought pressure.
Yeah, he did. He was the leading sack getter, but he didn't get as many pressures as he did. But it's one of the things. Hopefully the Giants defense got better and Golden could step up next week. But he also played. And he was more familiar with the system last year than defense coordinator Graham brought in from Miami. So that's
also,
kind of the reason why.
Didn't he get more opportunities because they had no other choice than to bring more blitzes? They were trying everything.
Yeah.
And hopefully they are not having to do that now, right?
Yeah. If you look at it too, if the Giants are able to get pressure consistently with Leonard Williams and Dexter Lawrence and Dalvin Tomlinson, with those 3 guys, all of a sudden you can drop 8 guys in coverage. And, there was actually the word coverage sack, which is something foreign to most Giants fans for the last 5 years.
Well, everybody knows that, there's run blitzes as well as pass blitzes. And if you can get into the backfield, you can disrupt the best runners. That's one of the ways to bring Barkley down, is to get to him quick before he gets going. As a matter of fact, that's the best way to bring Barkley down.
Get in the backfield with a group of people.
Oh, yeah. So, all right. So, actually, you're saying they got a pretty good chance. But now, what about the pass defense against a Trubisky? All right. Now, if the Trubisky comes out from the first 3 quarters, I think you guys have got a shot to really shut him down. But if the Trubisky shows up, that was a rookie. And the Trubisky that showed up in the 4th quarter, and that's when you want to show up as in the 4th. And he has the capability. He did it for a whole year. And then his confidence went. I don't know exactly what happened. And he's been on a bad run. But all of a sudden in the 4th quarter, man, that kid looked good. He ripped around in his eyes. He was looking solidly downfield. There was nothing going on but Mr. Seriousness. He was totally confident. What happens if you guys have to face him?
I think, the best way to neutralize a quarterback is to get to him with the pass rush. So the Giants defensively, they really didn't dial up that many exotic blitzes this past week. So you got to wonder if that's something. Remember, this is a new system too. You got to wonder if they're like, know what? Let's throw a little bit more at Mitch Trubisky, because I think the one time the Giants came with a 0 blitz in the red zone, Roethlisberger just threw it up to the right side where Juju was able to get his first of 2 touchdowns. But maybe too, Ben Roethlisberger and Trubisky are 2 different quarterbacks. Roethlisberger, 2-time Super Bowl champion, even though he's coming back from injury, he still has it between his ears, and put him in a situation he knows where to go. Trubisky, I see them challenging Trubisky a lot more. I think the Giants secondary played a lot better than what people suspected when you hear of people opting out and getting arrested and all this stuff. I think Bradbury had an excellent game in week 1. Holmes, the I believe 4th-round pick for the Giants, he also had a strong game. So these are progress where it's like, you know what, the Steelers, they got some players, in their wide receiver core. The Giants matched up with them pretty decently. I didn't see anyone get overwhelmed or completely mismatched. I believe Claypool made a great play.
Juju had a hell of a game, man.
Juju did. And I think that the one thing is that Washington TD is just probably going to haunt the Giants, at least in that game, where if they were able to stop them there. But I definitely think there's a lot more energy. I didn't see one guy they just go to town and just totally mismatch them. But also, too, the pass rush is better. They're able to pressure the quarterback. So you pressure the quarterback.
I agree with that. I agree with that. Okay, look, well, let's wrap it up. As Jimmy Johnson always said, I had to work on a cowboy quote, okay? You have to win 2 of the 3 phases of the game in order to win a game. If you can win 3 of the 3, great, but you have to win at least 2. And the phases are offense, defense, special teams. With that in mind, offense. Who wins that phase of the game next week, the Giants or the Bears?
I want to say Giants.
I have to agree with you. I mean, if the Trubisky shows up of the fourth quarter, he's still got to deal with the fact that they can bring the heat. So it's a possibility that Trubisky can show up, but it's not a probability. All right, defense. Who wins that phase of the game? The New York Giants team or Khalil Mack?
I got to go with the New York Giants. You know what? I got to go with the New York Giants, but I won't be surprised if Khalil Mack has like 13 sacks, 8 fumble recoveries.
Exactly. Unlike on offense, Khalil Mack having a big game, I'd say that's a probability versus a possibility. I mean, now it's not 100% probability by any means, and that's the thing, man. I'm almost tempted to call this a draw, but you got to go. And I have to say, I think this is the time when if the New York Giants defense doesn't shine, it's going to be a problem. So I'm going to go again with the New York Giants at that. Special teams, we haven't really talked about them. On either side, we don't have to go any further. We have already New York Giants winning 2 of the 3 phases. So at this point, it's official. Are you picking the New York Giants to win next week?
Yes, I got to go with it.
All right, and I am as well. So nobody's going to get an advantage on the season this week. We're either both going to suck or we're both not. Yeah. All right, this has been a pleasure. This has been the New York Giants Weekly Week 2. We took it down. We looked at last week. We've also decided about the upcoming match, who's going to win in which phases of the game, broke it down. Be sure and come back next week. Be sure and hit that subscribe and that notify. You can find Tom here, Mr. New York Giants, on Twitter at defense_com. That's defense_. You can watch what he's doing there. You can't miss it. And he's a great follow on Twitter. Please do it. You find me at Stephen Vanover. You'll find Sports Talkline at Sports Talkline. This is where you find sports 24/7, 365. Until next week, listen like you play with intensity.